Hi, Saeeda. It's good to have you on our In the Bunker feature sessions. Paul and I have been having these sessions since the pandemic, really just to help share what's going on in our world to our own folks. And it turned out, some of them said, "Hey, we should post this," so we started posting it, and then we had the idea of having guests over, and you're our first A&M internal guest, and thought it'd be really interesting to hear. Lots going on in the region, obviously, with oil prices and with things that we're involved in. And we thought it'd be great to have that international perspective on the pandemic, the economic reality, and then a little bit of your personal story, which is I find quite interesting as I've gotten to know you a little better.
Thank you, Tony. It's very good to see you and to see you, Paul. Very nice to be here today.
Great.
Maybe you could just kick off with how the pandemic has hit the region and the effects of how the region is now evolving versus 3-4 months ago when things seemed a lot different.
Sure. So look, I think this region has been hit in very many different ways, and the way we've coped with it and the way we've reacted and the way it's evolving is also quite different if you look across. If I look at it, I think UAE in particular, we started feeling some of this in early March. And we started hunkering down in early March. And we closed the schools. We were one of the first ones to close the schools. The government's closed all the different offices. We went on remote working very, very quickly. And I think we did a very good job of flattening out the curve fairly early on. And you see that if you look at it, if you look at how the country responded, you see that a lot of that flowed through. And really, we took our time getting to the peak. We took a few months, but it was always at a very slow pace. And as a result of that, we managed it really, really well. And to today, where we are actually opening up the skies. Dubai is open again, and we're able to fly out. We're able to soon start seeing tourists and residents come back to the country. So you see slowly the city evolving. I think you'll see Abu Dhabi react in a slightly different way. I think Abu Dhabi has been a bit, a little bit more, I would say, grounded in terms of how it's reacted. And I think it's going to take a little bit longer to open up, but it's also well on its way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, and the Northern Emirates are probably going to follow suit soon. If we look at the rest of the GCC, we see also a similar trend in many ways, but some differences. Saudi is, I think, a slightly different story. Saudi is opened up a little, but I think it's probably going to take a little bit longer before it gets back to a little more activity. It's a much larger country. There's a lot more going on in Saudi. It's much more populated, so it's understandable. And I think the rest of the countries are probably somewhere closer to Saudi than they are to the UAE. So I think we see this. We see the countries in the region have gone through this. We closed down early, and we're now starting to open up. And it's in time because it's summer, and summer usually tends to be a time where there's a lot of people going out, and there's a lot of, let's say, family and social life that's happening outside the region. So I think in light of that, we'll see a lot more countries open. But yeah,
I heard July is a very nice time to visit the Middle East, right? Nice, cool and refreshing. Is that how it works?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic. Just make sure you bring your ski clothes. That's all I'm going to say.
You don't leave the malls.
Yeah.
But so great to have you as our first internal guest in the bunker, and we're bunkered down here. I guess why don't for those who don't know, you're our leader of A&M in the Middle East, which consists of, excuse me, right now I believe we have 2 offices in Dubai and in Riyadh, right? But I think what would be interesting to hear from you is, as far as our team goes in the region, how many people we have and what exactly we're doing there. But also, more importantly, how, as you as the leader, how did you manage the team, and how has it been with everybody working remotely? Because Tony and I talk about that a lot. We're dealing with those challenges a lot across the A&M firm all over the world. Would love to get your perspective as a local leader, how you're managing that with our people.
Sure. So look, I think it's actually been an interesting last few months. What most people don't realize about Dubai is and the UAE is, if you look at the population, it's about 85% expat, which means 85% of the people that live here won't necessarily have the same social networks and the deep connectivity to the country and the region as with a lot of other places. Which means when things like COVID or others happen, it's just the dynamics are slightly different, because you have to deal with a group of people that come from many different nationalities, many different countries, many different places, and they don't necessarily have that safety net that a lot of other people would in a lot of other places. So it's been frankly, that has been something we've had to very actively deal with very early on. We know that. I mean, we know that's a reality of being in the region in many instances, in many ways. And that's also, frankly, one of the things that makes us so unique and so great to be because it's the diversity, right? But if I look at it, that's been one key challenge for us as well. But I think we've dealt with it in a few ways. Very early on, when we realized that the country and the government were moving towards the path of working remotely, we decided as an office that we will do the same. And we recognize that if we are to do this, probably one of the very first things we will need to do is increase the communication. So we started on a weekly basis to have a meeting or an open meeting with everyone in the office, where we would come in, we would talk about it, we would talk about updates, talk about what's going on. So that was one part of it. The second thing we did is we were very open with a lot of our colleagues, and we said, listen, we understand that we're entering a period of uncertainty. So if you would prefer to go and be closer to your loved ones and work from other places, that's fine too. So a number of our team members actually took us up on that, and they said, you know what, we would rather go and be closer to the rest of our families. And they flew out close to the beginning of the slowdown, and they've been working remotely. And and so on and so forth. And as time has gone by, we're learning, like everybody else, in terms of how to deal with this better. So we've started doing some fun and interesting things. Last week we had our first trivia night, and we all got together, and it was a lot of fun. And I think we'll keep doing more and more of those things. So I think it's making us become a lot more creative and become a lot more integrated, I would say, as an office and a community than we were in the past. And which is a good thing, which is a very nice thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned that 85% of the population are expats, but correct me if I'm wrong, you're one of the 15% that's an actual Emirati, right? Where you could trace your family roots all the way back to the beginning of time in the region, essentially, right? So I guess the question that I got to ask the question here, how has the rest of the population, the non-expats, how have they been dealing, with the pandemic and with the lockdown? And how has that been with our clients in the region? Are they comfortable working remotely like our team has been? Have you been able to effectively serve clients and things like that?
Sure. So look, I think it's been, if you know much about the culture and the society here, we tend to, we like interaction. We're a very social group of people. We like seeing each other, we like talking, we like meeting. And to go from that to social distancing was frankly not an easy transition, right? I live very close to my parents. I normally see them every week, and I didn't see them for almost 2 months. Wow. Exactly for this reason. Absolutely. They're older, they're not in the best of health. So it was unfortunately for the better, but it's just, these things are not easy, and they don't come naturally. And different people reacted in different ways, but I think for the most part, most of the people did do what they needed to do and follow the social distancing protocols. What was exceptionally tough was that this was happening during Ramadan, and again, Ramadan is even more the time where you connect with family, with friends. It's a time of spirituality and of community. So it made things very unusual, right? Mm-hmm. Very unusual. But what I will say is, given all of this, I think we adapted quite well. and both from a personal, but also from a professional point of view. I mean, we've now gotten to the point where, you know, we're doing a lot more things on Zoom or Teams or whatever it is. And that's becoming much more acceptable than, frankly, it was. I see a lot of things changing, whether it'll be long-term or short-term, we don't know. But, you know, I do remember when this started out, a lot of our clients who previously would insist that we be there on the ground because it was important and essential to get a lot of work done, were suddenly saying, you know what, actually don't, we'll do this remotely. We started and ended projects fully on remote, on VC. So it's been quite unusual and quite different than, frankly, how we've delivered in the past. I think lots of good things have come out of it. And I think where we get to in the future will hopefully be some kind of an integrated model where we take a little bit of what we used to do, a little bit of what we've learned through this, and we put it together and we see where we land.
Very good.
Saeeda, the UAE, particularly Dubai, and to some extent Abu Dhabi, is a really vibrant social city. Lots of restaurants, lots of places and things to do, usually indoors because it's so hot, but a lot of things to do. And, you know, restaurants have been proliferating. And yet now with this pandemic, there's a lot of hospitality and restaurant businesses that are really struggling. And I know a couple of friends that have had businesses there are actually shutting their businesses down. What do you think is going to happen to that part of the industry, of the economy, given these businesses did not have lots of working capital room, safety nets, and yet there's a demand for that in the community? You think that there's going to be a rotation? You think that there's going to be sort of a rationalization of it?
Yeah. Look, I think there will be a change, and I think there will be some that come out of it, and I think there will be some there will be new concepts and new things that will come out of it. I don't think what's happening here is necessarily any different than what happens in many other parts of the world and is happening all over the world and happens as we go through cycles. I think it's happening at an accelerated pace. That is absolutely the case, but I think it's absolutely something we've seen before. Yes, I suspect there are some restaurants, and probably not only just hospitality, I think this would probably go for businesses in general, that did you know what, they either they saw this coming or they were just better prepared for any other reason. And they did what they could to make sure that their cost base was as flexible as possible, that they were able to minimize their costs, they were able to become and leverage digital as much as they could, and frankly, just adopt an agile and a lean operating model. I think for the ones that were able to do that, that reacted quickly and were able to, bounce back, frankly, quickly as well, they will probably continue and they will continue to thrive. There are a lot of restaurants that we see out there because I've started going out again as of about 2 weeks ago. And I can see it, the restaurants are starting to pick up. A lot of places are starting to pick up. And the ones that reacted quickly are probably the ones that are going to survive. The ones that probably had some more fundamental issues in their operations and their operating model, or perhaps were just simply not as competitive, are probably the ones that will either not make it through or will need an overhaul. But frankly, I would say in those cases, fundamentals would have caught up with them anyways.
Let me ask you from an investment perspective or an investor perspective. Last time I was in the region was last year. And I remember kind of the two big things were investors in the region were looking to diversify away from oil, as well as just geopolitical instability in the region. Now, fast forward to where we are today, obviously oil prices have come down even significantly more than they did last year. What are you seeing from an investment perspective as far as money flows in and out of the region? And where do you expect that to go during the pandemic?
Sure. So if we look at it, I think there's probably two kinds of investors and investment behaviors that we're seeing. I think there are certain groups of investors that frankly had the means and frankly the appetite as well to take advantage of some of the things that we're seeing. I mean, they're in the papers, right? There are lots of large deals that are happening. just yesterday, there was a $20+ billion deal that ADNOC announced in terms of the gas pipes. So there is a lot of activity happening. If you look at it, Mubadala has been active, PIF in Saudi has been active. So there's a lot of deals that are going on and that are still quite active. And I suspect that will continue because a lot of these investment funds, well, the investment companies, but also sovereign wealth funds, are quite mature and they understand what it means to look through the cycle, and they understand that this is probably the time when they should start looking for good deals. I think that's one part of it. But I think there's probably also another group of investors that perhaps was not quite as well positioned going into this and has not been able to react as quickly or frankly as in an agile way as they would have liked to. And I think with them we will see a bit of a slowdown, and I think we will see a bit of probably not as much happening. So what will happen in terms of the future? I think probably in the short term, the number of deals may slow down a little bit, but at the same time, a lot of the serious investors will still very, very much be there. I think that's on the investor side. What we're also starting to see on I guess, the opportunity side is a lot of the businesses, family businesses, etc., who for a very long time have had a very diverse portfolio, have been able to hold on to many, many different companies, some perform well, some perhaps not so well, have been able to hold on to it because the business overall has been good. Now, with everything, they're forced to make some tough decisions and some tough choices. And you start seeing them look at businesses not as an aggregate, but on an individual operating entity level. And perhaps some of the businesses that they are not the natural owners, they're thinking about it might be time to divest, it might be time to exit for some of these. So I expect we'll start to see a little bit of an uptick in that activity as well as we go forward.
So Saeeda, this part of the year, usually those of you in the region that have been working all year seek to take a little holiday and get out of the region and seek cooler locations. How are people dealing with the fact that you can't travel, or at least travel is going to be restricted, and everybody's been tied to the region, and it is awfully hot. I was there for 5 weeks and there wasn't a day that it didn't hit 40 or above. So there is something about the region during this time of year.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Tony. This is summertime, and it is getting hot. It is getting a bit humid. Look, I think there's uncertainty right now in terms of what the summer will bring. I think the good thing is slowly we start to see that at least the Bay has opened up, and I think hopefully some of the other cities, airports, etc., will also open up. People are hoping that at some point they will be able to fly out, they will be able to spend some time away. Remote working is remote working, so they can continue to work other places. I think that's a little bit also the question mark right now, which is we've been in this remote working mode. We can probably continue for a while with everything that's going on. Nobody quite knows when people are going to get back to work. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty in that space, but I'm pretty sure we'll find a way to take a little bit of vacation at some point in the next few months.
So we were talking a little bit earlier. I want to talk a little bit about you personally now, Dr. Saeeda Jaffar. We should make sure we give you the proper respect as a doctor. I think it would be interesting for people to hear. I know it because I've spent time with you in the region, but many people don't know. I think it would be good to just get a little bit of your background and, before you got to A&M, and then how you got to A&M. And then a little bit about your personal life, your family life, and how your husband and your son, you've been managing through this. I know we were joking earlier about your remote schooling, and I think it would be good for people to hear a little bit about just your journey to A&M and how personally you've been managing during this period.
Of course. So look, I'm an engineer by training. As you said, I guilty, yes. It's what my brother says, I'm a fake doctor, yes, but I have a PhD in engineering. And pretty much right after that, I joined consulting. I started off with McKinsey in the US and then moved back to the region. Been back in the region for about 12 years or so now, 12, 13 years, originally from here. So this is home. This has always been home. and then was with Bain locally for some time, and it's now been about 5 years at A&M. And it's just been fantastic. It's been a fantastic journey, and from frankly professionally, but also personally, it's been very, very rewarding. And what I've loved about my time here is just the ability to get things done, right? You don't sit there, you don't sit at pontificate, you don't spend a lot of time thinking about what needs to happen. You spend a lot of time doing what needs to happen and just focusing on the results, which is fantastic, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think that's exactly what the region needs, the ability to implement, the ability to just deliver and get results, just make them happen, right? And we all know what needs to happen. Let's just get on and do it. And frankly, that was the reason I joined A&M. And the last 5 years have been fantastic. But I will say, I think the last few months have been quite unique, even from the perspective of the last 5 years, right? You always hear about A&M, and A&M is we're a global leader in restructuring, proper restructuring. But frankly, we've had the pleasure of having Tony in the region, along with several of the other fantastic MDs who've done this before, and working with them side by side, learning from them, but also doing and delivering on complex cases such as NMC has really just been, when you see it in action, you understand really there's nothing else like it. So
Saeeda had to sell a business in like 4 weeks, in less than 4 weeks, soup to nuts, with hardly any information. So there was no information in the business. It was a fraud situation. As you know, NMC is a fraud situation. And we did it. She did it. And M&A processes, we talked about it in a couple of bunker sessions. People can't really travel to see things. So you have those constraints. You have information constraints. And yet we were in a very urgent situation to preserve the business and, preserve jobs and preserve some of the people. It was one of the non-core businesses that we had. And Saeeda, did we execute all of the sales or we're getting there?
All of them are more or less executed. Yeah. Most of them are. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So we're getting there. Yeah, we're getting there.
Tell you what else the cool Saeeda story is. We were there. The first wave of us had to actually physically be quarantined in our rooms for 2 weeks. The second wave, we're able to get away with 1 week because they took the test and the rules kind of changed. But we were there for 2 weeks. And that first week was tough. When we got there, we had, gift baskets and all that. So it was great. But that end of the first week, all the gifts were they were gone. We went through them all. We ate them all. And we were kind of going into our second week, and Saeeda had a mystery gift sent. We didn't know who it was from. We were just wondering who gave us these great gifts, and it was Saeeda. I still have the chocolate dates that I've been
the dates.
The chocolate dates that you gave us at dinner. That was amazing, and the dinners that we had were great. All the different dinners we had. So it's been great experience, and I guess that's the great thing of that culture, is that there is still a personal importance of personal relationships and connections, and it's not just about the business. It's also building relationships, and that's the first thing people do there when they do business, is they establish, who are you? Are you somebody I want to do business with? And that was evident. So great from our standpoint too, Saeeda, that you were a gracious host and took care of us.
It was my pleasure, and we're looking forward to having you back in the region. So
yes, I will be back.
But I think that point, Tony, is actually a really good one, because the times that I've been in the region with Saeeda, and we've been going around meeting with clients and relationships, many of the people that Saeeda has brought me to meet with have been family office types and family organizations where that personal connection is really critical. And I think if you're an expat in the region, you really don't have access to those type of individuals. And that personal connection, I see, goes a long way. It's great for our business, and I've seen the benefit of that, the personal relationships, and how that comes into play. I mean, Saeeda, you would obviously agree with that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, I think it's every culture is different and every place is different. And I think for anyone to succeed anywhere, you absolutely need the technical side, but you also need the human side of it. And what exactly I guess the technical side is a bit more transportable. The human side tends to be a lot more unique and nuanced and specific to the part of the world that you're in. And I think it's the same here as it would be anywhere else, right? It's we're a specific part of the world. We have our traditions, we have our ways, and we love our ways, and we're very happy in our ways. And I think it's important, and we fully recognize everybody may not understand or know our ways, but I think it's equally important to respect each other's ways, and I think that's what makes for great relationships. Absolutely.
Saeeda, project yourself 12 months from now. What does A&M and the practice look like post this pandemic, post the very meaningful cases that we were able to secure in the last couple of months, and the initiatives that you've got with respect to building the team? Where are we now, and what are we going to look like in 12 months?
So in 12 months, look, I think the most important thing is, first and foremost, I think our people need to be happy, they need to be safe, they need to be secure. I think that's absolutely number one. And everyone who's with us now would have gone through and would have said, you know what, we did it. We all came out of it stronger and closer as a team and together. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, in terms of the clients, I want to make sure that our clients, they should feel, not because we asked them or we told them, but they should genuinely feel that even through this, we did everything we could, and we helped and we supported them to the best of our abilities, and gave them the best advice, and worked with them side by side to help them get through what is probably some of the most challenging and difficult times a lot of us, if not several of us, are going to live through or have lived through. So I think those are two probably from a fundamental point of view. And from a growth point of view, I think we are in a wonderful position. And I hope that in the next 12 months, we will continue to grow the business. We will continue to become bigger and larger, and frankly, deliver quality work the way we have been in the past. I mean, 5 years ago, we were barely 10 people. We are now well above 60 or so. So I think, we want to make sure we keep growing and we keep delivering quality work, and we keep doing what we do best. Great.
Well, last question for you as we finish up the session. When Paul comes back to the region, are you going to take him to the same restaurant that you took me, the Lebanese place?
So, I don't think Paul's been to either of the restaurants that you and I went to.
It's not at Emirates Palace. That's one of my favorites.
We went like the real place, Paul. Where the locals go.
I've gone to some real places. That place on the beach with the big boat of meat or whatever we ate, right?
Well, that was good. The Turkish place on La Mer, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, we yeah, that was a good one. But there's a really nice one that you're gonna love, Paul, when you're here. When Tony was here, we went to the Bulgaria Hotel. It's a new one that wasn't here the last time you were here.
Okay, so it didn't exist, Tony. It didn't exist. Otherwise, I would have been right up in.
I enjoyed that last dinner we had, where it was not as fancy and new, but the food was great. I kept going for the salad. I just kept going dousing the salad, and then I thought we were done, and the team just kept ordering more food. I mean, you just say more and more food. And I'm like, who's going to eat all this food, guys? No, we're hungry. So, this is what happens when you get quarantined, confined for 2 weeks. When you get out and you can eat, you're like famished. And I think we all lost pounds when we were there, and we all gained it back after we came out.
Yeah.
Well, here's another fun fact on Saeeda. She doesn't like the sun. She doesn't like the sun, and she's living in the middle. She goes out of every way possible to be out of the sun, even in the car, always out of the sun.
That is true. That is very true. I spent several years in Boston and New York where I didn't see the sun. And you know what? That part of it made me very, very happy.
It's a hard place to live if you don't like the sun, I would imagine.
It's okay.
Well,
All the
Saeeda,
other things make
yeah,
up.
thank you for joining us here in the bunker, and it was great to get to hear how you dealt with things over the last couple months and hear your personal stories. You're a great example for the region and in your leadership. So it's great to have you as our first A&M guest.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.